They together build the strongest elemental nation, paved the way for the rest of the world to follow. Here we find ourselves overlooking the Hidden Leaf village, and the leaves from on top of the very same mountain Madara and Hashirama Senju once stood. Of course, there have been some changes made to the surrounding landscapes. Now, down below, rather than a lush of large forest of green trees, there's a population and thriving village. Shinobi and civilians interacting and living their lives. The village was always a happy place. Today marks the five-year anniversary of the defeat of the nine-tailed fox at the hands of the four Hokage, Minato Namikaze and his triplets. With the help of his wife Kushina Uzumaki, the third Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi, and two of the three legendary Sonings, Tsunade Senju and Jiraiya the Toe Sage, Minato was able to split the nine tails into three separate containers. One into his eldest, into his eldest daughter Mito, who was a carbon copy of her mother, and his youngest daughter Narumi, that had his hair and blue eyes, and the other in his youngest son Menma. Menma had a similar body structure to Minato, but Menma got his crimson hair and violet eyes he got from his mother. From the top of the Hokage monument, you could see them walking through the streets to their favorite restaurant, Ichiraku Ramen. Along the way, the villagers are all smiling at the sight of Minato, 26, and Kushina, also 26, praying, walking through the busy streets with the prince and princesses of the leaf. Mito, Narumi, and Menma are celebrating their 5th birthday with some lunch at their favorite restaurant. To get all the best shinobi's weapons and attire from their godparents, Tsunade and Jiraiya, and other clan heads. But they had no idea what their parents were going to get them. They had to try to find out, only to be told it's a secret. But you're gonna love it. Whatever it was, both parents seemed to be excited about it. This feeling of excitement rubbed off on everyone. Whenever the 10th of October rolled around, the entire village seems just happy. Well, all except for one. At the top of the Hokage monument, on the head of Tobirama Senju, we find Naruto Namikaze, the eldest child of Minato and Kushina, and the heir to the Namikaze Uzumaki clan. Naruto has spent the day all alone, just like he spends any other day. His parents always ignore him for his younger siblings, and the rest of the village seems to follow. Today is his 6th birthday, but he was the only one who knew. Every year he would wonder if his parents would remember. He wanted nothing more than to celebrate it with his family, and just have someone to be around, someone who loves them.
Today I'll be showing
While
you the
Minato and
best.
Kushina never directly tried to hurt him, he was always treated as an annoyance. He was constantly seen as an inferior version of his siblings. He couldn't understand why. Naruto learned a lot about himself on his 5th birthday. None of it was shared. Flashback a year ago. Naruto was excited. He couldn't sleep all night because he was so excited for today. The day he turned 5, this wasn't just your normal birthday, no. Clanners are typically trained from the age of 5 on through their time at the academy so they could graduate at the top of their class. Naruto has noticed that his parents never seemed to be interested in him for as long as he could remember, but this would be the year he changed that. This year he would work hard and show that he will be the best clanner you could ask for. Naruto ran downstairs to see his parents decorating the house with happy birthday signs. Naruto couldn't help but crack a 100-watt smile at his parents who were just noticing him. "Ah, I knew you guys would remember that," said Naruto, tears forming in his eyes from sheer happiness that was flooding his system. Kushina and Minato exchanged a quick glance before looking at their son with a confused expression. Kushina spoke up first. "Of course we couldn't forget your brother's and sister's birthday." She came across as offended at the fact her son believed she would forget such an important day. Naoto's eyes widened. Horror, sadness quickly replaced happiness. "What do you mean by brothers and sisters' birthday?" Naruto choked out, holding back tears at this point. Minato was very confused. First, his son comes down, happy as he can. Then Kushina talks about how they are prepping for the triple's birthday, and now he is a burst of tear. It was at that moment Naruto knew he was really nothing to them. His birthday, the day that only comes once every year, that was supposed to be his happy day, and his parents didn't even bother to remember. The tears were flowing freely now as Naruto ran back upstairs, slammed the door. He couldn't believe what was happening. His parents forgot about his birthday. For as long as for as long as he could remember, he couldn't had a birthday party or been involved in the party with his siblings. But this year was worse. He knew deep down he shouldn't have gotten his hopes up, but couldn't help but get excited about being a part of his family. He didn't Many of the presents were extravagant, like the triplets will always get. As always, he didn't want big parties and hordes of guests. All Naruto wanted was to be accepted by his family. They basically told him he was insignificant. Naruto cried for hours, and no one ever came to check on him. He heard when his siblings woke up and went downstairs to see their living room covered in decorations. The sound of laughter and happiness was like a knife to his heart. Only got worse at the party. Everybody treated Naruto like he didn't exist. He was treated like a bother, and when the occasional visitor talked to him, it was always about his siblings. What's it like being related to the prince and princess of the
Today
leaf?
I'll be showing you
Or
the
how are
basic.
Lord Menma and Lady Narumi and Lady Mito today? Or the one that crushes spirits like a nut in a nutcracker. I don't even know Lady Mito and Lady Narumi and Lady Menma had a sibling. After realizing that no one would miss him if he left, he wandered into his parents' library onto the table. He saw a couple of books laying out titles, introductions to chakra control, beginner chakra theories, and my training regimen. There was two copies of that last one. Naruto started to look through the books and only sparing a brief glance at each page. Right as Naruto was looking at the last pages of Introduction to Chakra, Minato and Kushina walked into the room, each smiling. They saw Naruto looking through the gifts and reacted naturally. Naruto, don't touch that. It doesn't belong to you. Kushina screamed, startling Naruto, making him rip the page he had in his hand. The gates of hell were open. Both Kushina and Minato started yelling at Naruto so loud the party downstairs stopped. Everyone present bore bear witness to one of the harshest verbal lashes ever given to anyone, let alone a 5-year-old. Both they accused Naruto of being a jealous brat, just being an all-around bother to them. Naruto couldn't look at them. He stared at the floor and cried as the lashing intensified. Naruto could barely maintain his composure. He was muffing his sobs when his mom grabbed him by the face, lowering herself to his level. She continued, "What the hell are you crying for? You break your siblings' presents and now you think you can get off if you just cry? Get out of my sight. I don't want to see you for the rest of the night." Quickly a holler, inches away from Naruto's face. Naruto dragged himself out of the library to his room. He didn't sleep that night. As we go to present time, as Naruto thought back, he discovered two things. He has photographic memory. All he needs is the slightest glimpse of exposure to something, and he can remember it perfectly for the rest of his life. He remembered every single word his parents said to him that night. The mere memory of that night wrecked him emotionally. Naruto had a few attempts to breach the gap between him and his family. His father has started to train Mito, Narumi, and Menma every day, oftentimes leaving his paperwork for the night so he can fully dedicate himself to the triplets. They weren't exactly quick learners. Minato was considered a prodigy and Kushina one of the hardest workers on the face of the planet, so naturally they were able to race through the ranks and become two strongest shinobi on the Hidden Leaf. They were also determined to make Mito, Narumi, and Menma as strong as possible, for the fate of the world rested on their shoulders. Naruto remembered hearing this about some prophecy pertaining to the triplets, but the title was not really for his siblings, but little did he know that was the reason he was pushed aside. Flashback 1 week after the Nine Tails attack. Are you absolutely sure, Jiraiya asked the troubled Minato? Sparing Sparing a worried
Today I'll
glance
be
at his
showing you
wife,
the
Jiraiya
best.
had just rushed back from an emergency summon to Mamiyaboku. The toast stage had an important news he needed to share with Minato. Immediately, Jiraiya had received a prophecy from the toast about Minato and Kushina's children. According to the elder toast, Foresight, a child of the Yellow Flash and Crimson Death, would use powers never seen before to bring the world into an era of either peace or chaos. Immediately, Jiraiya believed it would be either Mito, Narumi, or Menma, since they would be trained in how to harvest the power of the Nine Tails. The only previous container, Mito Uzumaki, yes. In this story, Kushina was never the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Hence, she survived the attack on the leaf. That's the part. Had never been able to do much more than suppress the beast. The fact that the power was split up into two containers would make the chakra unstable, and maybe the triplets would one day master the powers. Jiraiya, I believe, completely forgot the eldest child of the Namikaze Uzumaki family. There is no doubt in my mind one of the triplets would be the child of prophecy. We need to do all we can to put them down the path of peace, not chaos. This means they need 100% of our attention. Kushina, Tsunade, the two of you and I will have to do everything in our power to make the villagers see them as saviors and not monsters. Train them to fight so they can handle the hardships they are destined to face. Above all, keep them happy. We can't afford to have the child of prophecy fall into darkness. Jiraiya said with an unwavering conviction. His words railed I almost said Jiraiya. His words railed Kushina for the upcoming task. Minato still has some words. What about Naruto? Minato said. The others in the room could sense the worry in his voice. He and Naruto had bonded within the year since his birth. Naruto was a carbon copy of Minato. Minato had never felt as happy as the day of Naruto's birth. All of the accomplishments and praise he received meant nothing to him. The undying love he felt for his child was unlike anything had he ever experienced. Never having parents of his own, Minato was nothing more than to have a family when he was growing up. He had the love of his life with him, and was able to was also blessed with a healthy son. He would never forget the day October 10th. It was the day he was completed. He had a son to bond with, tell stories to, tease, do everything he never got to. Now Jiraiya was telling him to put Naruto aside for his new kids. Now, don't get him wrong. He loved Mito, Narumi, and Menma just as much as Naruto, but he knew what it means to be alone in the world, and he wouldn't wish on his worst enemy. He had to deal with it, because his parents had died in the Second Great Ninja War. The day of his funeral, a 5-year-old Minato vowed that he would become strong enough to defend those close to him. He would protect his family and never abandon them to the cruel shinobi world they lived in. Looking at Jiraiya as if daring him to say the wrong thing, Minato
Today I'll
awaited
be
an
showing you
answer.
the best.
Kushina beat Jiraiya to a punch. Hell no, we are not going to abandon him. He is as much as our child's as Minato and Narumi and Memo. We just need to focus on the trippers a bit more. Flashback ended. Hokage office. A bit more Minato thought to himself as he signed off on Kushina's gift to the triplets. Now, Minato deeply regretted not shooting down that prophecy nonsense as soon as Jiraiya brought it up. Every time he saw Naruto, his heart broke a little. His eldest seemed to be completely broken. Minato would often catch Naruto watching the triplets interact with his family and friends, his eyes full of remorse and longing. The Namikaze name carries merit and power all around the world. Minato had built a legacy for his children to build from, but you wouldn't think that Naruto was a Namikaze by the way he is treated. Most of the village has forgotten he even existed. Those that didn't give him the mediocre of the other Namikaze. When Minato heard that, it took Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Kushina to keep him from killing the civilian council members that addressed Naruto in such a way. He wasn't the only one in doubt. Kushina was stubborn, hard-headed, and wasn't entirely sure this was the best course of action. It pained her to see Naruto heartbroken, but she knew that if the fate of the entire world was in the balance. She kept telling herself that she just had to make it to the triplets' fifth birthday, then they would start training the triplets. Kushin, Kushina figured when they started training the triplets, things would be easier. She would fully devote herself to Mito, Narumi, and Menma, and she wouldn't have time for anything else. She she never went back on her words. On the day Jiraiya came to her and Minato with the proper sheath, she vowed to be the light of for her Mito, Narumi, and Menma. She wouldn't allow them to slip into darkness. The pain she felt in her heart never faded though. It got harder and harder for her to see Naruto, so much so that she would often blow up at anything did and send him away. Her emotions often shifted from sadness to anger in a blink of an eye. Naruto would often get scolded over minor things because Kushina needed to vent some of the angers and she held for herself. She figured eventually things would be smoothed out with Naruto. Today the triplets would start training. Mito was always self-motivated but would get discouraged easy. Menma laziness rivaled that of Narumi was always kind-hearted and trying to keep up with it and convince and force Minato into going through with it. Tonight was going to be a big night. There was a party at the Namikaze compound. And yes, they have a compound, they don't have a tiny house. Today was a very important for the Leaf residents. To score points for the Hokage, many civilians and shinobi's alike would pull out all the stops and get only the best gifts from Mito, Narumi, and Menma. Once 1 year, Minato would wanted to turn away the gifts, but Kushina rejected the notion, saying they weren't his gifts to return. Wanting to keep the triplets happy, he complied. This year was the worst year yet. In the back of the corner of their rather lavish living room stood 3 mountains of gifts, one for Mito, one for Narumi, and one for Menma. If one were to look to the left, the impressive stocking feet, they would see the eldest Namikaze. Naruto was sitting at the end of the stairs in a plain black shirt, dark gray shorts. His messy blonde hair shadowed his eyes. From all the party goers, he was forced to attend the party every year, as if to rub in his face the fact that his siblings got more than he could ever dream of, while he got nothing. Love, no acceptance, no real family or friends. A single tear ran down Naruto's face over his trademark whiskers, birthmarks. 3 on each side. He pulled from his agony by his mother speaking up to gather everyone's attention. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate you all taking the time to come and celebrate Mito's, Narumi, and Menma's 5th birthday, Kushina said, with a beautiful smile on her face, reminding many why she was one of the most sought after maidens in the elemental nations. Anything for the prince and princess of the leaf. A rather drunk civilian slurred out sincerely. Kushina's smile widens as she looked back at Mito, Narumi, and Menma sitting next to each other, with Minato to the right of Menma, with Narumi to his left, Mito to her left. We are going to start opening gifts, so please, if you would, do this orderly. We wouldn't want to repeat last year. Kushina warned with a smile that promised pain to anybody who ruined Mito's, Narumi, and Menma's big day. Minato laughed nervously. He remembered with what his wife had done to a few civilians that rushed to share their gifts and ended up running into an end table and breaking her favorite vest. The crowd remembered too, so they organized themselves into a line. Civilians first, then shinobi second. Naruto watched with envy basically oozing from him. He watched as his siblings received top-of-the-line training gear, masterful craft materials, jutsu scrolls, countless books pretending to combat intelligence and chakra theories. His siblings were well-mannered for the most part. Some of the books got disapproved looks from Menma, but with a dangerous glare from Mito and Narumi, he quickly shaped up. Now their godparents were approaching them, each holding the sealing scrolls. The twins' eyes widened, the size of a dinner plate. Jiraiya and Tsunade laid the scrolls on the table and gesturing for the twins to sign them with a childish glee. Mema signed the Toe contract and began yelling about how he would become
Today
the
I'll be
greatest,
showing you the
the
best.
strongest shinobi ever. Mito and Naomi were much more reserved, but still wore a rather large smile as they signed the slug contract. Damn. The room was in shock. All, all the shinobis had heard stories about two of the strongest clan summons, the Toads and Slugs. They also knew that only a handful of people in history had signed those contracts, putting the putting the prince and princesses in some very good company. The onlookers started to applaud. Kushina and Minato rose from their seats as they were walking to the front of their children. Naruto noticed that his father was holding something in his hands, the official seal of the Hokage on it. A little curious, Naruto rose and inches his way through the crowd until he was directly behind his parents. When he got there, he could clearly hear something that would change his life forever. Minato quieted the crowd and noticed his eldest had made his way to the front. A moment of eye contact with Naruto made Minato consider scraping this entire idea. He wasn't sure he could do this to him in the first place, but to do it at a time like this, in front of all the important figures in the village, that would make things immensely harder. Minato thought maybe by some chance this whole ordeal would go over Naruto's head. He was still a child after all. Still sealing his resolve, Minato decided to continue. I would like to thank you all for all the gifts. On behalf of my entire family, I hope you enjoyed the night and we can celebrate it like this many, many more times in the future. Minato cracked us uh, charismatic smile. That was her reciprocated by the entire crowd. For some reason, Naruto got the feeling something terrible was about to happen. Looking around, he didn't see anything out of place around the room, so he decided to curb his thoughts and return his attention to his father. We had just one last gift to give to the triplets tonight. Naruto narrowed his eyes. The foreboding feeling returned, but this time much, much stronger than before. As the four Hokage of the village of the Hidden Leaf, I, Minato Namikaze, named Mito Namikaze Uzumaki, the heir of the Uzumaki clan, Narumi Namikaze and Uzumaki, the heir of the Namikaze clan, and will personally be training Menma so he can one day take my place as Hokage. The crowd reactions were mixed. Oh boy. The overwhelming majority erupted into a craze of cheers and clapping. Some even went as far as whistling and screaming like they were celebrating a victory in a tuning exam. A select few knew what this meant. Shikaku Nara, the Nara clan head, and his son Shikamaru stared in disbelief. They knew Naruto even kind of liked the boy. He was kind of warm-hearted to everybody, but his eyes had held sadness that is indescribable. They didn't know what
Today I'll
caused
be
the
showing you
sadness,
the
but
best.
now they got their answer. A couple in the crowd looked. Hayashi Hyuga, Fugaku Hyuga seemed indifferent towards the news. Behind, Minato and Jiraiya Tsunade were hugging and congratulating Menma and Mito respectfully. Both children were the happiest they had ever been in their life. Menma was shedding tears of joy while he buried himself into Jiraiya's chest, laughing and smiling the entire time. Mito was uncharacteristically expressing too. She was smiling and openly laughing with Tsunade, going as far as to jumping off her chair into Tsunade's waiting arm. Narumi ran and gave her father the biggest hug imaginable. The celebrations were cut off short when there was a sudden explosion of chakra in front of them. As all eyes widened at the display of powers and jaw became acquainted with the floor, when they saw who was emitting the high amount of chakra. I can't talk. In the center of the room stood Naruto, shouting a glare at his father that would turn Medusa to stone. Around him, whipped out vicious whips of light blue chakra, tearing off floorboards and blowing back civilians and shinobis that were unfortunate enough to be nearby. His eyes had pure rage and betrayal, while his body released more chakra than an average jonin. His parents looked at him with wide eyes for several reasons. The first, which was they didn't know Naruto had awoken his chakra. Secretly, Naruto has been training in chakra control. He studied chakra theories at the public library. He naturally was able to mold his chakra easily, making the tree walking exercise and water walking exercise a child's play for him. He had even asked Tsunade for some basic medical ninjutsu he could train in, but was sharply denied. The second reason was the sheer amount of chakra he was emitting. While the Uzumaki blood ran through his veins, even a full-blooded Uzumaki cha- chakra reserves were dwarfed by Naruto. If he had uh, if he had the equivalent to the Jonin at the age of 6, what would he be like when he gets out of the academy, or even after that? Minato's thoughts were almost identical to not to the thoughts of Tsunade's and Kushin and Jiraiya. Naruto cut their thoughts short as he took a step forward. The wood floor spreading underneath his excuse me, said Naruto, far too calmly for the situation he was in. If I heard you correctly, you just took away the only thing that this family has ever given to me. Naruto continued to walk towards his parents, snapping at them for their treason. Naruto, you don't understand. We were just. Kushina was caught off with Naruto's chakra jumped to a whole another level. Kushina looked at Naruto in awe. He's radiating more chakra than I have. He was interrupted from his thoughts when Naruto spoke again. I don't understand. I don't understand, Naruto yelled, releasing even more of his stored chakra, shattering windows and blowing everything in the house away like a tornado. Let me tell you what the fuck I understand. None of you care about me. You ignored me for years because of those three, and now you take
Today
the
I'll
only
be
thing
showing
I
you the
ever had,
best.
the only thing that I ever proved I that I exist. Naruto continued as tears were flowing freely down his eyes. Do you know what today is? He asked his parents. Most of the crowd were trembling at this point from the sheer chakra being whipped out around the room. Do you? Naruto hollered, making everyone in the room wince. As lost for words, Kushina and Minato tried to talk, but nothing came out of their mouths. The sadness and neglect in Naruto's eyes were replaced by pure rage. Minato's eyes widened in realization, but before he could speak, Naruto said, "Did today's my birthday?" Naruto yelled so loudly, even a certain pink-haired, bushy councilwoman was shocked. The room fell into a state of disbelief. Minato and Kushina stared at their son, shocked, sadness, and self-loathing, all fighting for control over their emotions. Now they understand why Naruto always acted the way he did on this day. For 5 years, it hasn't been his birthday. It had been the triplets' birthday. Never has he been acknowledged alongside the triplet. He had always been alone in the shadows of the triplet. He wasn't vulnerable. He was put there by his parents and godparents. Their obsessions with the prophecy and the triplets had made it impossible for him to get the one thing he wanted love. He felt unwanted, his parents, and unloved by his godparents. He was sick of it. He may be 6, but he had the intelligence of a academy graduate. He was a genius, a prodigy, but his parents wouldn't have known. They never took an interest in him. But Naruto remembered all of it. Each painful rejection, each unwarranted testing of all of it was burned into his mind because of his photographic memory. Tears started to fall from his eyes, his parents' eyes, but Naruto didn't notice. Maybe it would be just better if I didn't exist. Naruto yelled at the entire house, was enveloped in a bright flash. When everyone recovered, Naruto was gone. Naruto was the first one to step out of his. Minato was the first one to step out of his daze. I said Naruto a mistake. Ambu, he yelled. In the blink of an eye, there was 4 masked figures in genetic Ambu grabbed, kneeling in front of him. Find him, please. Find my son. As soon as Minato finished, the Ambu disappeared. Disappear and other shinobis to find the eldest son of the Namikaze. Minato turned to his family to see a troubling sight. Instead of the happy, laughing children he had seen a moment ago, Mito, Narumi, and Mema were trembling, being comforted by the two Sonings. Then he looked at the two to his left, and his eyes was a combination of sad and rage, and she was a hip on the floor crying, rethinking everything they had done to this point. Minato could only hope that his Ambu and could find Naruto before he did anything to harm himself. At the top of the Hokage monument, a very drained and
Today
pissed
I'll
off
be showing you
Naruto
the
laid
best.
flat on the top of the second Hokage statue face. His emotions were a hurricane of sadness, rage, and disappointment. He had trained himself into the he had basically trained himself into the ground for the past year to try to impress his parents. He just wanted it to be accepted by his parents and godparents. So he trained every waking moment. He was dedicated to better himself, farther enhancing the natural abilities. This wasn't how he wanted to reveal them. He just wanted his parents to be happy for him. He just wanted them to be proud of him, not treat him like a nuisance. Naruto cried quietly to himself, looking off the edge, considering jumping off. He was interrupted by a roughing in the bushes behind him. He expected it to be his father's armor, but he was surprised instead when he came to face with a particularly unique figure. In front of him stood an 18-year-old who looked like he was in his early 20s. He had a shaggy brown hair that sat in a sort of organized chaos on top of his head. He stood just shy of 6 feet and wore black sweatpants that covered his legs completely. Instead of the usual shinobi sandals, Naruto had grown accustomed to the stranger, wore just jet black combat boots to watch his sweatpants. His, his torso was covered with a gray dark muscle shirt. Black straps could be seen wrapped around his body, supporting the sheath for two 9-inch black bladed knives. The stranger was spinning one on his hand like it was second nature. The knife whipped around his hand in a blur, but looked completely natural. The hilts were a vibrant gold, while the handle was covered in black leather. The knife was placed parallel to his spine on either side. His build was the largest side. His chest and stomach was out in the open, covered only by his skin-tight muscle shirt. The only thing the shirt showed the veil of his battle-hardened body. His chest and ass were well defined, and you could make out every detail in his arms. His body is like the Captain America body as soon as he came out of the pod. Over everything, he wore a brilliant gold cloak that was open in front and rimmed with black outlines and accents along the edge and pockets. He had a weird design on the back end of the cloak and looked like a small star of David within another large star of David. The stars were connected by many extravagant lines and tomos encircling the design. The design was perfectly symmetric, as if it was basically created to be even. Around his neck was a gold necklace with a white gold arc anchor charm in the center of his chest. Lastly, on his back were two identical swords. Each had a handle that was a quarter of a meter, covered in black leather like the knives on his back. The blades were exactly 1 meter long. The hilts were covered by some sort of medical bandages that
Today I'll
sealed
be
the
showing
swords
you
in
the
his
best.
sheath. The details of the blade remained secret to any onlooker. His neck was exposing, showing a few nasty-looking scars that seemed to run down onto his torso. His face and jaw were very primitive, lacking any kind of fat in his seated weight. His face was absent of scars, but his eyes were piercing. The gold around his pupils seemed to glow in the dim lightning of the forest. His eyes expressed wisdom beyond his age. Interesting Naruto to no end. Naruto couldn't take his eyes off the man as he approached his status and demeanor demanded respect, but it was well deserved. On the top, on top of that, confidence that came off him and drove. He had the most welcoming aura Naruto had ever experienced. Something just made you want to be around him. As he got closer, Naruto just seemed to be at ease. All the emotions that were running rampant in his mind were all calm in his presence. He carried himself like a deity. His steps make no noise. The moonlight reflected off his cloak to give his overall appearance a mystical feel. You know, I thought about it too, the mystery stranger said. He took a seat next to Naruto, and to stand still standing Naruto, he continued with his gaze fixed on something in the distance. How easy it would be just to end things now. Nobody would miss me. All the pain I feel would finally end. I wouldn't be alone anymore. Naruto noticed his neighbor's eyes change from welcoming and confronting to extremely sadness. What did you have to go through to carry that much sadness? It turns out somebody else had a different plan, the man said with a slight chuckle as he took the knife in his right hand, rolled up his sleeve to his elbow, and cut his left wrist all the way down his spine. As blood started to pour out, Naruto began to panic, and in a chuckle hurry, Naruto grabbed his arm and tried to apply pressure to the wound. As he pushed down, he felt something shifting under his hand. As Naruto removed his blood-soaked hand away from the stranger, away from the stranger, he watched in awe as the wound rapidly closed, leaving a bit of steam as the skin reconnected. Naruto looked up to meet the eyes of the stranger, and his eyes begging for answers. His curiosity was met with a low chuckle from the stranger. Imagine my shock when I jumped off a building to end it, but everything grew right back, just like before I landed. He fixed his sleeves and returned to his gaze to Naruto. The look of compassion and acceptance had returned. It took me trying to realize what's the right choice. People like you and me, we may be pushed aside. We may get left out. We may be hated, even hunted to the end of the earth, but it's our responsibility to do as much good as possible. We can't let their ignorance and stupidity be our downfall. The man stood up and walked away from the edge. Once he was about 10 feet from the edge, he extended
Today I'll
his
be
right hand
showing
and
you the
opened his
best.
palm. In a flash, brilliant rainbow colored flame, the same flame as the dragons in the Avatar, The Last Airbender, a 2-meter golden staff appeared in his hand. Upon closer observation, one would notice the black indentation running all through the length of the staff. The tip facing Naruto had what looked like a spread of eagle wings, and in between the two wings was a gem that was consistently shifting colors like it was alive. On the back end there was another gem, but this was one pitch black, making it look like the tip of a kunai. I see too much of myself in you, Naruto. I see the pain and sadness in your eyes that I carried when I was your age. I want nothing more than to help you, to give you one thing you always wanted. The man said as he turned to Naruto with his left hand extended. I'm asking you to trust me. If you want to be strong, I'll make you the strongest shinobi on the face of the planet. If you want to travel the world, I'll take you along for the ride and we can see everything the Elemental Nation has to offer. As much as you want a family, I want one too, he said, as he took a few steps towards Naruto, his left hand still extended. Naruto didn't know what to do. Just after his parents finally confirmed his worst fear, he had this teenager come and offer him everything he ever wanted. Naruto wanted it to be spectacle. If his own family didn't want anything to do with him, then why would a stranger? As his inner war raged on, he didn't notice the man walk towards him and embrace Naruto. Every doubt he had in his mind erased right there. He felt the sincerity in what the man had told him. He could feel the desire to help, and tears began to form in his eyes. He had never been hugged like this by his family, and they rarely spoke to him. Outright avoid physical contact. In this man's arm, he felt something he hadn't felt in a while. A rush of positive emotions he hadn't experienced in years. Happiness, relief, and acceptance flooded his mind as he buried himself in the chest of the stranger. Thank you, choked Naruto out as he tried to maintain his composure. Ace, my name is Ace, the former stranger shared. You you aren't alone anymore. I will always be there for you, Naruto. Happy birthday. Ace released his staff as it disappeared in the same flash it appeared, and he pulled out a necklace like his own from his right cloak pocket and put it around Naruto's neck. He then fully embraced the boy, feeling many of the same emotion as Naruto. As tears fell from their eyes, they knew one thing: they weren't alone anymore. That so then we will continue. We this time it would be this time we skip 11 years. This Naruto is 6, yes. A 17-year-old shirtless blonde rose out of bed at 7 a.m. like he had every day for the past decade. He walked out of his room into the bathroom to go through his usual morning
Today I'll
routine.
be
When he
showing you the
got
best.
in front of the mirror, he got a good look at himself. Long ago, long gone was the child body he had when he met Ace. It was replaced by the type of body girls could only dream of. The muscles of his chest, stomach looked like they were carved in marble rock, or the greatest rock in the world. No real deposits of fat exited on his fit body. So with the advance of his shirt, you got to follow each individual muscle and all of its movement. His muscles were much denser than a normal shinobi as well, making his skin seem like it is reformed and hard to pierce. Below the belt, Naruto had legs that could carry him for days and not give out. His punches and kicks were strong enough to shatter bones like a glass and pierce iron like paper, but his strength was something that he considered his weak point. Naruto focused more on speed. Without his resistance seals, Naruto was faster than the current Raikage, with his lightning armor active. Earlier in his training, he realized that there were certain things he would never catch Ace in. Strength was one of those. Ace's bones were made out of some sort of metal that he bastard was the strongest metal in existence. Comparing Ace's strength to that of Tsunade would be comparing a professional weightlifter to a newborn. For the first 5 years, Ace wouldn't throw a punch at Naruto, in fears of permanently damaging him. As Naruto grew up, he naturally became tougher and stronger than anybody in his generation. All of those ass kickings by Ace were at least good for something. Could confidently say that he could best nearly everybody in a strictly taijutsu fight. He wanted to fight against Guy when he had opened the eight gates, but he hadn't had the opportunities. Naruto didn't consider what he did as a training. Was a slave driver and would work Naruto till he couldn't walk every day. For the past 10 years, his body was consistently sore and his head always hurt from memorizing things. Every day, Naruto was with Ace from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. God damn, working on whatever Ace had planned for the day. Usually, the first and last hours were used for meditation on the day's techniques. During this time, Ace would also funnel minimal amounts of his powers into Naruto's system, allowing Naruto's body to adapt to the power over time. They would sit back to back. Ace would manifest what his power. Ace's powers was unlike anything Naruto had ever seen or heard. For one, Ace didn't use chakra. Instead, Ace described his power as an ability to manipulate energy itself. He said that where he was from, there is 5 kinds of people. The first, which have rapid regeneration. He demonstrated the night they met. The second group have
Today
the
I'll be
ability
showing
to
you the
control
best.
matter and energy with their mind, or telekinesis, as Ace called it. And this ability is what allowed Ace to manipulate any type of ninjutsu style by manipulating the energy around him. No hand signs were required. All he must do is clap his hands together to balance the power he would put into the attack. Imagine the way Ed and I, I think I said it wrong, transmuted in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Even that's even the awesome sound. While he could use every element on the level of the second Hokage water style, the thing Ace could do with fire, lightning, and wind amazed Naruto every time he saw them. Ace's fire required a ridiculous amount of water to put out and would burn hot enough to melt stone, steel like butter. He could mold it into almost any shape or form he could imagine. Naruto still had a few scars from Ace chasing him around with a rainbow fire tiger. Fighting and wind were just as remarkable. Lightning and wind were just as remarkable. His telekinesis power weren't restricted to energy. They could manipulate matter in the world that Ace presence touch. I keep on saying that wrong. Excluding people and other living animals. He must touch animals and humans physically, then he could move them with his mind. He could also summon beautiful golden and black vectors, as Ace called them, that looked like a giant 2D circle that had many designs around the center. Think think the magic circles from early on in the fairy tale series. These would appear whenever Ace decide, designed it or wanted it to. These produce a force that would push anything in front of it. Naruto had also noticed that Ace could manipulate his body with telekinesis. More than once, Naruto had rushed Ace thinking he had an opening, only for Ace to contour his body around and land a bone-crushing hit to his jaw. Joe, what the hell? The third power Ace had was telepathy. Telepathy. He could read the thoughts and sense the presence of anybody within a mile of him. He could alter the memories and reality someone would see if he could concentrate hard enough. Naruto was put through a very intense mental conditioning. Thanks to this power, Naruto was was now he could basically wipe out all Genjutsu thanks to this absolute mental defense Ace helped him build. Ace could also control someone if he makes eye contact. Looking into his eyes in a fight was like signing your own death sentence. This power got very annoying when they would spar because Naruto constantly had to focus on hiding his thoughts from Ace, or it would be a very painful experience. Eventually, blocking Ace's mental assault became a second nature, but he could never
Today
find a
I'll be
way to
showing you the
escape
best.
after making eye contact when Ace used his oct- Octo's form. Ace, Oc- Ace Octo's form was a very similar to the Mangekyo Sharingan, but had a few key differences. Rather than making a Susanoo, Ace was capable of transferring energy into a solid state of armor, walls, or anything else he could think of. Ace also had the enhanced perception and predictability that came with the Sharingan. He also had perfect 360-degree vision when he activated. The design was the same as the symbol on Ace's back, which made sense to Naruto. Ace never told Naruto how he got those eyes, but he didn't press the issue. Telepathy was the power Ace used to the least he didn't want to intrude on a person's privacy. He had developed a way to shut it off like a light switch and would leave it off for majority of the time. His last power was Naruto's favorite. Ace had the power to teleport anywhere he had in his memory or could see. Like Naruto, Ace had a photographic memory, making it easy for him to travel great distances and an absolute pain in the ass to fight against. Whenever Ace would teleport, it sounded like he was ripping his very existence from the earth and forcing it somewhere else. It is the same sound as the one from Sonodu from Bleach. Sonido from Bleach. Ace always said that this was his favorite power. He could teleport himself and things he was touching or things he had marked by placing his palms on them. The mark was the same one as his cloak. Ace's teleportation was the fastest thing Naruto had ever seen. Even his father's flying Thunder God technique took a fraction of seconds to travel to the seal. You wouldn't predict where Ace would appear because he didn't rely on seals. Naruto would always love and hate this ability. It took Naruto 5 years for it took 5 years for Naruto to unlock these abilities. Each one came in his time of need. His dis- he discovered the regeneration first when Ace punched him in the stomach for the first time. His insides were reduced to confetti, but he felt a heat over his body. Then the pain started to fade. He watched as with a combination of horror and awe as he watched his abdomen piece itself back together while he still had to deal with the pain of his injury. But from the loss of a limb to the removal of vital organs, Naruto could always regenerate. Ace warned him that he had to protect the spine because that is where the bias for the regenerative power manifests. Naruto was happy to know his weakness and had already come up with a few ways to protect it. After repetitive regeneration, Naruto's
Today I'll be
bones also
showing you the
became
best.
denser than they previously were. His bones were similar in strength of steel, but would still shatter like a vest if he took a direct hit from Ace. Naruto had discovered telekinesis when he was attempting to combine elemental elements. Naruto's natural elements were wind and fire which he masters within the first 3 years of training with Ace. His mastery over fire was just like Madara's, and his mastery in wind allowed him to fly and manipulate air around him in the ways few had ever been able to. He was trying to recreate the first Hokage's wood, pro- wood process was slow until he asked Ace for the help. At the age of 14, Ace explained the concept of energy manipulation for Naruto and walked him through combining two different types of energy together. When it was all said and done, Naruto was confident that the first would be proud of his skill in the wood style. On top of wood style, Naruto also learned to use the search style, ice style. He only learned these because of the attacks Ace could create and use against him. While not interested at first, Naruto fell in love with these three styles. They were all very useful and only limited by the imagination of the user. Naruto had discovered his telepathy when he was trying to block one of Ace's mental assaults. He ended up trying to turn the table on Ace and saw some of his memories. When he scared him, he was scared to go and poke around in other people's minds. Now, so he followed what Ace did and used his telepathy for fights only. He was never able to unlock the control power that Ace had, but he was glad about that. A power like that would be too tempting to use, and Naruto didn't trust himself like that. Funny enough, Naruto discovered his last power, teleportation, mid-ass kicking. While Naruto base speed may surpass the Raikage, when Ace puts effort into his teleportation style martial arts, Naruto looked like he was standing still. He was desperate to escape a situation in which Ace was repeatedly flicking him in the forehead. And for those that don't know, Naruto, even Naruto's denser bones were cracked by flicks from when Ace tried. Naruto loved everything about teleporting. Ace had helped him work on it into different style fighting, but Naruto was limited to places he could see or had placed his mark on. Naruto marked was a simple chibi. Naruto was with a thumb up and his tongue sticking out. Ace and Naruto found it assuming Ace had also taken a full advantage of Naruto's photographic memory and taught him a lifetime worth of martial arts and skills in a decade. No matter the opponent, Naruto now had a style he could use to counter them. When you add in his teleportation and telekinesis enhancement potential, the potential was dragon enhanced. The same thing. Naruto noted many times how much stronger
Today
his
I'll be
punches
showing
and
you the
kicks
best.
were when he used telekinesis and enhanced his muscles and bones before he struck hand to hand. Wasn't the only thing he trained over the years. For Naruto's 7th birthday, Ace made him two bio knives that were just a few inches smaller than his, and standing at 6'3" as opposed to Ace's 9-inch knives. That year they spent countless hours working on techniques and ways to incorporate the knives into his fighting style. Ace used them for quick or quiet kills. He also used these instead of kunais because he could just teleport them back to him or pull them back with his telekinesis. Naruto used them in a very similar fashion. He just didn't really like to throw them because he was usually fast enough to close the gap and wouldn't even have to bother throwing the knife. He knew Ace had specifically crafted all his weapons, so he wasn't going to change much from how Ace used them. For his 8th birthday, Ace made Naruto a staff like his own. It was the exact same in everything except for the weight and the gem on the staff. While Ace's gem was a rainbow color on top, jet black on the bottom, Naruto's top gem was gold, but his bottom gem was black. Was black like Ace. Ace's staff also weighed somewhere around 250 pounds. Naruto was like a solid 75 pounds. The staff was Naruto's personal favorite. Everything about it just came naturally to him. He could even annoy Ace in a strictly bow staff fight. Ace showed him how to augment his staff techniques with minor telekinesis usage here and there. Naruto could summon and display his staff much like Ace, but he liked to carry it with him whenever his hands were in fall. On his ninth birthday, he received a last gift weapon set from Ace, the twin blades on Ace's back. Once again, Naruto's blades were shorter, but also a quarter of a meter this time. They fit him perfectly. He loved everything about them, and while they were made out of the same metal as Ace, Naruto figured out that each of the weapons Ace made were from metals he had gathered from cutting off his limbs and harvesting the bone. Naruto was a bit weirded out at first, but when he confronted Ace about it, Ace said that he trusted Naruto with the strongest substance in existence and wanted to give him only the best equipment to use. He said the only two with blades made from that metal were him and Naruto now. Ace was unrivaled in combat. Nobody would ever be able to stand up in a fist fight. He had mastered countless styles, shared many of them with Naruto, but Naruto knew he stood no chance against Ace in taijutsu. The second thing, Ace was a godlike at Kenjutsu. Ace described the sword as being their own person. He talked about earning the trust of the blade, but Naruto just thought he was a bit crazy. Well, at least he did until Ace unsheathed his blades for the first time. Ace had taken Naruto to a
Today
mountain
I'll be
range in the
showing you
mountain
the
of
best.
Iron Country. When he took swords out of their cover, he sliced straight through the largest mountain in the range. The cut was perfect, clean, and unlike anything recorded in history. In the middle of the Iron Country, when he took his sword out of their cover, the there was no chakra or energy being used. It was just a slice into the blade, releasing a sleeve-shaped projectile. The energy. Then he decided to use energy. The energy would either strengthen the blade or cut through anything in its path. Naruto had to regrow more than a few limbs when he was learning to use and block his technique. Naruto grasped the concept of Kenjutsu very easily and was able to pick up intermediate techniques and styles in 3 months. He spent the remainder of his time studying high-level techniques and incorporating his own personal touches to each style. The style Ace used was called the Dragon Stance. It was fully incorporated power Ace had and was combination of every other style Naruto had ever seen. By taking the best parts of each style and mashing them all together, Ace created a style with no weak points. This style was the hardest for Naruto to master because of the complexity of it. The style came natural to Ace because he had been able to use his powers all his life. In contrast, Naruto was still mastering his teleportation and telekinesis. He didn't either master it until he was 15. Even after mastering his powers, Naruto's ability limited the potential of this stance. It would be years until he was truly a master of the Dragon Stance. On Naruto's 10th birthday, Ace sat down with him and spent the day answering any questions Naruto had about his past, the training regimen, or anything else Naruto came up with. This conversation lasted all day, and Naruto now knew Ace's life story. He explained to him the concept of space and travel between planets. Ace also pointed that many things were different in his world. His people aged a lot slower than Naruto. Ace had also deduced that for every year on Naruto's planet, he aged about a week or two. That explains why Ace had barely changed over the 11 years Naruto had known him. There was also minor changes. For example, a year on Legion was 18 months rather than 12. Naruto was amazed by the technology Ace explained. Metal boxes that could travel millions of miles times faster than the speed of light. Once Naruto had a basic understanding, Ace got into his life. He talked about how he was born to a loving mother and a father, a faraway planet called Legion. Legion was the center of intergalactic empires that had ruled for 10,000 years.
Today I'll
There
be
has
showing you
been
the
there
best.
has been three previous empires: the originals, the predecessors, and the trans descendential. As Ace said, that his people were descendants of the predecessors and overthrew the transcendentals in a long, bloody way. Ace describes his home a very militaristic. They value strength and your worth on the battlefield. Almost everyone had a legacy and were trained from the day of their birth to fight. Every kid wanted to grow up to be one of the 5 commanders in Legion Army. There was one. There was one to represent each legacy group, as well as those without legacies. But the unity of the army didn't end all conflicts. There was many violent outbreaks between divisions that would escalate into full-blown civil wars. There was one thing that made the people unite: an enemy greater than themselves. In the Legionite society, it was rare for one person to have 2 legacies. The odds were about 1 in 1 million. They often thrived in military, but were kept around because they had limited amount of power. There was about 100 dual legacy warriors in the army at a time. At the time Ace left, there was 3 people who had 3 legacies. Ace had fought the 3 of them when he was younger, and upon defeating them, convinced them to leave behind the Legion army and fight for their own purpose, not the agenda of some politicians that didn't care about them. As Ace said, people like him were hunted down and killed at all costs. Ace talked about how he lived a happy life until he was 5, and his family was attacked by the Legionite military in fear of Ace could become his. Ace's mother was a beautiful petite woman. She was over 5 feet tall and was the smartest person in the empire. She was always hard on Ace, but he knew she only wanted him to succeed. And she was 25 when she died. His father was the only person that could mentally match his mom. He was a decent height of 5'9" and was a health nut. Most Ace training was done with his dad. He loved it when his parents were together because they brought out the best in each other. His dad's name wasn't mentioned. He died at 24. He said that the technical term for his different power was legicize. As Ace said, the fear the normal warrior had for Legion. People with the abilities to use all 4 legacies was common and crippling. When he was 4, Ace had awakened a few of his legacies and was seen using them at school. He was recruited into the military at a young age to ensure his loyalty, but his parents rejected the offer. They said that they wished for Ace to have a normal childhood and join the military at the normal age, 16. And this is where I'm going to be leaving it off. Thank you guys for watching. Goodbye.
Today I'll be showing you the best